emergency kit. It contains life-saving medications like ivermectin, Z-Pak, and antibiotics. Stock them before they block them.
This is a special report.
Knowing how to invest your money is harder than ever before. Dealing with stock market volatility, record debt, and terrorist attacks requires new thinking. At U.S. Asset Management, we can help you see the world more clearly so that you can move beyond the chaos and invest with confidence. Call us, visit us online, or drop by our office. U.S. Asset Management, helping you make better decisions with your money.
Руки, тому що я щойно побачила, як летить ракета. І я почула це.
We are honored to have back with us Bob Amsterdam. He has been instrumental in the fight against the destruction of the Ukrainian Orthodox Church by the Zelensky government. He's coming to us from London. Bob, thanks for coming on. I really appreciate it.
Oh, I appreciate you having us.
So there's been a lot happening. We had Hegseth in NATO headquarters today saying Ukraine is not getting American troops. The 2014 lines may not be reestablished, not going to be part of NATO. There's talk of Zelensky getting removed by an election. What are you hearing on the ground there, and what are your thoughts in regards to the church and how it's going to deal with all of this?
Look, I mean, number one, Zelensky is monumentally unpopular. Mm-hmm. And I want to say for the record very clearly that we have been deceived by our journalists. I cannot tell you how many Western journalists, I'm talking about the Washington Post, the Financial Times, the Guardian here in the UK, have just, for whatever reasons, failed to tell the truth about the feelings on the ground concerning the Zelensky government. It is an absolute dictatorship and a police state. Mm-hmm. That is not to say that the Ukrainian people are not extraordinarily brave, that they don't have a superb army, and that they don't have tremendous morale. And as you know, I support Ukraine's fight for sovereignty, but the government is absolutely horrific. And I will say that in Washington a year ago, I honestly felt, as an opponent of Zelensky's government, because of what they were doing to my Christian brothers and sisters, I felt at risk. Mm-hmm. I felt that literally their control and influence over the DOJ and others, they have an open criminal investigation against me in Ukraine for my defense of the church, for no other reason. It is one of the few countries on earth for defending followers of Jesus Christ. You can be given a criminal charge. It is outrageous. As you know, I have clerics in jail. I have elderly clerics literally being tortured, being kept in solitary. I have churches being burnt. I have churches stolen. What is going on? And by the way, there is another church, a state church, founded by the State Department of the United States and funded by American organizations in part, that is stealing these churches. Mm-hmm. And the crime of these followers of Christ, of a 1,000-year-old church, of a church that everyone in Ukraine was baptized in, Their crime is that there is a spiritual connection to the Russian church, not an administrative connection at all. This church has been independent since 1990. In 2022, when the war commenced, they separated completely. But because there's a canonical connection, the U.S. State Department, working with the ultra-nationalists in Ukraine, broke the chain of orthodoxy in Ukraine. And as an American citizen, I can tell you, I am horrified that American policymakers have subordinated religion in their all-out fight against Vladimir Putin. I think it is a complete crime.
Well, there's two issues there. One, people don't realize Zelensky, the government is illegitimate, as is the parliament, because they have overstayed their electoral mandate for some time. And the issue of the American State Department actually, as you said, funding, and I would say probably came up with the idea to get rid of that church and to make it happen. I mean, do you know where that came from?
Yeah. Victoria Nuland began it in 2014. Mm-hmm. Interestingly, the American ambassador to Ukraine, who was working with Nuland, was then transferred to Greece. And what happens? That man works, along with the Secretary of State Pompeo, works to convince the Patriarch of Constantinople to steal the Ukrainian denomination away from Moscow and take it for Constantinople, which violates all sorts of Orthodox law. And this plan is the State Department, along with zealots in this other church, the OCU.
Yeah, it's fascinating, and it violates history too, not just canonical law.
Yeah, and again, you know, it's one thing when it's academic. It's another thing. I took at tremendous risk to my young lawyers I brought with me. I brought a team of us into Ukraine. We were visiting priests, and every priest I met was followed by the SBU. Mm-hmm. One of them was beaten up to the point he had a heart attack. I mean, these are priests.
Yeah.
I mean, it is just unfathomable to me what goes on. And let me tell you something, and I hope I still have a few minutes.
Yeah, go as long as you want.
I was in Washington last week at a religious freedom conference. Now, this religious freedom conference is a very famous conference. It's connected to the prayer breakfast. I swear to God, I didn't know if I was in Washington or Kyiv. The Ukrainians were in control of the conference.
Wow.
Our money wasn't accepted because one of the sponsors of the church has just been charged with treason in Ukraine. His treason being statements he made in their parliament a few years ago, pointing out flaws in the Zelensky government. This is a man, by the way, who has been sanctioned by Russia. So no friend of Putin getting charged with, quote, treason. All in attempts to blacken the church. We get there. Last year, we weren't even allowed in the door. This year, we're put on a stage with 5 other people, given 5 minutes to tell the story of this church that's being decimated. They add to the panel a very distinguished theologian to present the Ukrainian side, because they populate every other panel with Ukrainians. They have a free cash bar for 1 hour celebrating Ukraine. Here are the ironies. Number one, where are the Ukrainians getting the money to sponsor all this? Number two, Ukraine is the only country in the world with a parliamentary bill banning a Christian church. And the guy who wrote that bill, the persecutor in chief, was on a panel concerning human rights defenders.
There you go.
I would compare that to Hitler speaking to B'nai B'rith. I mean, it was insane.
There's a lot of hypocrisy going on. What do you hear from the Trump administration? is there an understanding of, obviously they want the war to end, which I think is obviously a step in the right direction, because to me anyway, I want the killing to stop. I think there needs to be a peace treaty. Nobody's winning in this war.
No question.
And so that's a positive, but are you getting an understanding from officials on the Trump side that they see what's happening regarding the church?
Look, to be very frank again, and I'm just, I've been with you before. I think I can speak openly.
We're all about truth here. So
well, let me be really blunt, and I'm very sad as an ex-Democrat.
Mm-hmm.
No Democrat but one, Richard Durbin, wanted to speak to us. They don't want to speak to us. This was last year. I think now a few of them will. They don't want to speak to us. One guy did, and then his staff almost mauled me and didn't let me speak. The Republicans, to their credit, have been quite sympathetic to this story because Tucker Carlson has had me on, to his great credit, a few times. Mm-hmm. I am not in a position to say much because I have had, at this point, really no official contact with the Trump administration. I have spoken to people who were in the first administration who are, I think, quite sympathetic to the church. Mm-hmm. Robert Destro, who was undersecretary, has been very public, condemning the behavior of the Ukrainians and condemning U.S. support for the Ukrainians' destruction of the church, and God bless him for that. But you need to remember only one senator had the courage to denounce the Ukrainians, and that senator is now Vice President of the United States.
Interesting. So, well, that's very positive. What do you see on the ground in Ukraine? I mean, obviously that things are changing, and I mean, you may not be able to answer, but I know you have people there. Are they seeing like a change in the environment to where people can talk more freely, or is the repression getting worse?
No, the repression appears to be getting worse. Uh-huh. Zelensky and Yermak realize they have no way out. Mm-hmm. And I think they're hunkering down. I think there's even more theft of assets. Ukraine was always corrupt. Mm-hmm. I think it's only worsening. There is, as you know, no freedom of the press. The courts are horrifically impaired. Religious freedom, when it comes to our church, does not exist. And in respect to other churches, they parade people out to speak about freedom. But, as the Russians do, they seem to have compromat on a lot of people. So You really can't tell what's legitimate and what's not legitimate. And when you have an environment where you have a major church like ours under this level of attack, facing extinction, I have congregations meeting in the woods because their churches have been stolen or burnt. And if you go to SaveTheUOC.com, you'll see videos of these poor people now meeting in the woods. And the way the law is drafted, it may even be a criminal offense for them to congregate together in the woods. I mean, this is how insane the situation is. And I am, I've been on radio, as you know, thanks to Candy. And I've been saying to people, look, call your priests, call your rabbis, and get them to speak to the Ukrainians. I mean, our request isn't to Washington, it's to Kyiv to say, stop the insanity, because literally it is blackening the name of Ukraine for no reason.
Last question, the peace process. Do you think this might be a carrot in the mix to restore this church? Have you heard anything like that in a peace deal?
I would tell you, we would be seriously disappointed if that was not the case. And one of our problems has been that Russia has not behaved well. They have been persecuting inside the occupied territories, and we we share Ukraine's concern about what's happened in the occupied territories. But what Ukraine refrains from mentioning is that the majority of the priests killed in this war are our priests. And our priests are also in jail for supporting Ukraine in Russia. And again, that gets absolutely no coverage. In fact, they use damaged UOC churches as if they belong to the state church. So in terms of peace process, I would say right now, President Trump has tremendous leverage. President Trump, I have to hand it to him. I mean, I think, I spoke to a colleague, a Russian colleague today, a lawyer who works in the West, and he's a brilliant guy. And he said, Bob, do you understand you are having your own perestroika? And I said, what do you mean? He goes, hey, you have a vibrant president taking over from an old doddering fool. You have all sorts of new vitality being injected into the country. Trump's restructuring everything. And I certainly would say that some of the stuff that's been done, listen, there are issues I'm going to disagree with as a lawyer. I think we have to be very careful about any form of revenge attacks at DOJ or anything else. But my God, some of the stuff he's done in terms of, for instance, the FCPA, FARA, some of this other stuff, which was just, these are organizations set up to attack business and to attack America's ability to operate in the world. I think it's a great, as an international lawyer, I think it is a great step in the right direction to get the United States back into the world. And it's a funny thing. People say, oh, Trump's an isolationist. I don't think so. I think by taking the handcuffs off business, and let me tell you, under the Biden administration, everybody's handcuffed.
Yeah.
I mean, you have so many prosecutors going after so many people. And again, I will say to you, for all of those people who are screaming about Trump right now, it is the Biden administration that began this politicized justice. You ask serious lawyers, like the late David Rifkin. I
would say it was Obama, this was the third term of that.
Yeah. The same thing. But absolutely, they politicize the system. And it's got to stop, because that's not the American way.
What about your community, Bob? I mean, the people you run with every day, Democrats or whatever, what are they, are they seeing the light? Are they, I think the left-right paradigm has collapsed, and it's more, are you for freedom or control? But are people seeing what's happening? Are they coming around? Are they thinking?
I have to say to you, I think it's also an age thing. I think guys my age, let's say the over 60 variety, especially those of us who are so poor they have to keep working. Yeah. I think a lot of us are just seeing freedoms opening up that we thought were doors closed forever, that we're thrilled about.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of the younger people, a lot of the Democrats, are running very scared because a lot of their networks have been kind of destroyed. And let's be frank, Trump has also had a tremendous break in terms of the people he's with. Some of them just, did not make the cut.
Yeah, like Pompeo and others. Yeah.
Yeah. And I think, to be frank, I think his new cabinet, I think it's a mixed bag, but there are some people in there who are like his Treasury secretary, who are really, there's a lot of hope for. And, I was not one of those who was so critical of the new defense secretary. I think there's honestly a position that it needed a dramatic change. We needed a clean house.
Completely agree. Anything else before we go? You want to get out?
I mean, look, I'm back. I'm back in Washington next week. I'm giving a speech for the Salzburg Center on rule of law. I'm going to see Tucker again, and I'm just trying to bring attention to what's happening in Ukraine. And
Are you going to be at CPAC?
No, I won't. I have.
I'm going to be in DC. Let's have coffee or something.
No, I would appreciate it. As you may or may not know, I represent the Congo. So the Congo is, of course, a situation, which is, for another day, but an incredibly horrific situation going on there.
All right. When I'm in the city, I'll ping you, see if you're around. All right.
Please do. Really great to see you.
Thanks, Bob. Take care.
Thank you. All the best. Bye-bye.